and thank you for tuning in. I just had a couple things I wanted to say before the interview you're about to watch. First of all, as you see, I've been working on some changes to the channel, and I made an intro finally. Also, I just want to let you all know that in the next few weeks, I will be in the process of moving, so content is going to be a little slow, but I have some more interviews lined up, and they're going to be really good, so please stay tuned and watch out for those. Finally, I wanted to invite all of you to please stay and watch to the end as I put together a montage of Makala's pics to show her life after leaving the organization. That's all I have, so let's listen in as we hear about Makala's journey growing up as a Jehovah Witness and then what led her to leave. All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel today. We got Makala here. She's a ex-Jehovah Witness, and she's agreed to tell her story with us today. So how you doing today, Makala?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Tell us all how you started out and how you became a Jehovah Witness.
So I was a born-in. I was one of five. I was a middle child. I had my two older sisters, my younger sister and my younger brother. And my older sisters were my mom's. She came into the cult when she was about in her mid-20s. My sisters were 2 years old. And then my dad, he was not born in. He also joined because his first wife was a Jehovah's Witness. And he started asking questions. He was at the time a Seventh-day Adventist. He ended up converting to being a Jehovah's Witness. And then his wife and him got divorced, and my mom and dad got married and had me. And then they had my little sister and my little brother and raised us all in. We were extremely isolated. We homeschooled from kindergarten all the way through high school. And even like our non-witness worldly cousins lived the next house over, never saw them. We saw them a little bit when my aunt was studying when they were like 5. And then she never made any progress. So like we never hung out. Even with people in the congregation, barely hung out with them. I'd see them at like the meetings and get-togethers and out in service. And there was one family that we would go over and spend the night, and we were close to them, but that was it. So very isolated growing up.
So when you say you homeschooled, now like in the area I lived in, we had a Jehovah Witness homeschool program for all the witness kids that honestly I never wanted to be a part of, but we had it. So did you have that, or did you go through a secular homeschool program?
So in our area, we were the only family that did homeschool for a while, and then another family started homeschooling. But my parents, for my older siblings, they went through a program, but for us younger three, we didn't have any program. It was kind of whatever my mom books she found or felt like. My parents didn't have any care on our education. They didn't feel like it was important. My mom skipped several subjects because you don't need to know this because it's not going to do you any good in the new world. So like anything to do with like science, that especially if it said anything other than what the Bible said on science, we didn't learn that. Government, didn't learn any of stuff like that, no politics. And honestly, like my older sisters, they started having kids when I was 9. And so my one sister never got married. My other one, she didn't get married till her son was about 6. So they both lived at home with their kids, and they ended up going to college and working full time. So my sister and I ended up babysitting. So like for a while I was just babysitting all the kids, and then our education was really just staying home and babysitting our nieces and nephews.
Boy, that almost sounds very similar to like not as extreme as the Amish, but getting
Basically.
there, because I know like I talked to an Amish lady before, and they only go to like 8th grade education because, like you said, they don't need to know it. You don't need to know the science. You don't need to know politics because you're going to go and do this organization, and that's your way to, whether it's God's kingdom or the paradise earth, like the witnesses teach. And that's all you need to know to get through.
Exactly. And so like I'm dyslexic. So my mom got me a self-help book to teach me how to learn to handle and deal with my dyslexia and learn how to read. I got a self-help book to do that.
And you know what's funny about that when you say that, she bought you a self-help book. Where do self-help books come from? Self-help books come from people who get educations. Self-help books come from people who study these things and learn about these things to help you help yourself.
Yep.
It's kind of an oxymoron when you think about it, because they're getting you this book to help you from somebody else who went and got educated to help you. And yet you can't get educated enough to help yourself out. It's really messed up when you look at it like that.
It is. And so my younger siblings ended up going through, in our area, they had a career technical center. So your last 2 years of high school, you could go to this career center. So my mom didn't know about it for me. The only reason my sister got into it is there was another young brother in the hall about my sister's age, and he was in it, and his mom made my mom feel guilty about not doing it for us. So my sister and brother got able to do it, but I missed it because I was too old.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So with that center, did they get into like some kind of a trade or something, or?
Yep. So my brother, he learned auto mechanics, and my sister learned hair. I ended up going to the same institute she did as a private student. So they ended up getting financial aid, so I was able to go do that. And that's how I became a hairdresser.
Okay.
So for the past 7 years, that's what I did, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but now I no longer do that because the state licenses didn't transfer. So when I moved, I had to find something else to do.
I got you. Anyways, so let's go ahead on back talking about your childhood, okay? And so how was your life as a JW kid? Obviously, from what you already said, first of all, it's very isolated from your story. And then, so like, how were your relationships like in the congregation? Did you have any friends, things like that?
So it's actually really funny because Connor and I were just talking about this on the way home from his mom's, because we were just there earlier. So growing up, like I said, I had one friend in the congregation. This is her and her sister. Our families were close because growing up when I was really little, my dad was an elder. But then my older sisters got involved in some stuff, and the one ended up getting disfellowshipped, and my dad stepped down as an elder. So from that point on, we were marked as a family. So we were not viewed as good association. And I was like 5 at the time. So from 5 years old, I was viewed as a bad associate.
Jeez. And
so we were never really included in anything. Growing up was very lonely because you couldn't hang out with friends at the hall. You didn't have friends.
Right. And that's got to be devastating, especially at that young of an age, for everybody to be standoffish from you and not have that contact with other people and all that. And it's got to really make you feel like you did something wrong when you really didn't.
And what added to that, me feeling bad about myself, is my dad did a lot of construction. So we went down to Mississippi, and we were down there working on this family's home. And the sister she was a sister. Her husband was a non-believer. So while down there, about the age of 5, I got molested by another child. So all growing up, I was taught that there was something wrong with me, that I was damaged, and because I am pansexual, I like both men and women, and everything in between. I'm more attracted to people's personalities. So because I'm that way, my parents taught me that was because I was abused, and this is side effects from being abused. So my sexuality was all because I was messed with and I was damaged. So that made me feel even more like there's something wrong with me, and this is why people don't want to be friends with me.
And that just goes more to their lack of education when they say stuff like that, because they really have no clue.
No.
You know, I mean, if you talk to anybody of any sexual orientation, it doesn't matter, straight, gay, pan, demi, anything, you'll find out that I've always been that way. That's just who I am. It's not a result of something happening to you in your life.
Which
And
is, as I've left and been able to improve on my education of just who I am and acknowledging what makes me me, I've been able to learn that. But growing up, it was definitely damaging to believe that this is what's wrong with me.
oh, absolutely. And add to the fact that, you know, of course, we're both ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, so we always had the Armageddon looming over our head. And
Yes.
if we weren't meeting these certain standards all the time and we're this certain way, then we're going to be killed at Armageddon. When, quite frankly, looking back at the literature and you look at the imagery they put in it, everything was so violent and graphic
Mm-hmm.
about how God was going to destroy people on earth, that it just made everything even that much more scary for you to deviate in any way from it.
Mm-hmm. And kind of to go along with that is, I always felt like because of how I was that I wasn't going to make it through Armageddon, and how the society teaches, like, if you're not pure, nobody's going to want you, and you're just like, you're damaged goods. So growing up, that was the opinion I had of myself all my life.
Yeah.
And they don't really do anything to make a difference between your choice to go and do something and make yourself impure, or you were taken advantage of. They don't. It's very like cut and dry. It's, if you are not a virgin, you're no good,
Oh,
regardless of if you had a choice
absolutely.
in that or not.
And just as a little side excuse me, as a little side note here, okay, for our viewers, Michaela and I actually first made contact through TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because I have a lot of people on TikTok that I see from different sects of Christianity that are deconverting and coming out of it. And, you know, as a former Jehovah Witness, you know, you think of it only as yourself in a way, because that's what you grew up with, not because you didn't want to know about everybody else, but that your culture was that kind of a culture. Everything's just isolated in
Yeah.
within you. And so watching a lot of these other people from their deconversion stories and leaving, that purity culture is a
Toxic.
huge thing. And I see it all the time on TikTok, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how, you know, all these other people are saying, you know, if I wasn't a virgin when I got married, then my worth was nothing. And it's just so sad that it's come down to that, and that religion has to oppress people for being who they are and shaming them for any kind of things they do that are perfectly natural.
Yeah. Definitely has a damaging effect on you.
So, and I'm sure that for you, you know, that's still something that you probably struggle with and are probably still trying to overcome, because it's been ingrained in you since you were born.
Yeah, the constant lack of self-worth, and like even people in that I deal with now, they're like, you really have to work on your self-confidence, because as a witness, you don't have any.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what is that?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's pretty
So
hard.
moving on then, so like, we both know that one of the big things witnesses pride themselves on. They always say, well, we don't baptize until people are old enough to get baptized. I remember hearing that all the time. You
Oh
see
yeah.
these other churches, oh, they baptize babies. But, when our people get baptized, they're old enough to know better. So tell me, how old were you when you got baptized? And were you
Well,
old enough to know better?
no, I wasn't. And honestly, the only reason I made the choice to get baptized was because, so this is the sad part. So I grew up super isolated. There were a lot of kids in that hall I grew up in. Tons. So around the age that, most of us started to get into our teens, there was constant talks from the hall, like local needs, pressuring the youth to get baptized. So at the age of 14, after listening to a public needs talk about how if you do not get baptized and you know right from wrong, God's going to destroy you at Armageddon. And because this is your choice, you can't lean on your parents' shirt tails anymore. Like, you need to make this choice for yourself. So I got baptized at 14. All of my friends started getting baptized because when you guilt kids into thinking they're going to get destroyed if they don't make the plunge, that's what's going to happen. Everybody's like, wow, all your kids are getting baptized. That's so great. Well, duh.
Yeah, exactly.
So at 14 years old, back in 2007, I got baptized.
Oh, you're such a kid. You're making me feel
I
old.
was.
Don't do that. I'm an old man now.
Crazy.
Jeez. I was 13 years old. I was little less than a month away from being 14 when I got baptized myself back in 1996.
There you go. So you're closer to my older sister's age because they are 12 years older than me.
Okay.
Yep.
But so I'm right there with you as far as getting baptized young. And when at the time, I remember I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. I know this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And now
you
looking
don't
back,
have any other option.
I have a daughter who is 14. She'll be 15 soon. And I have another son who's 12. And I'm looking at them and remembering how I was like at their age and looking at my own children. And I'm like, there is no way in hell that I'm going to allow them to dedicate their lives to something at that age. They're too young. They don't know what they want. You think you do at that age, but looking back, you really don't. And that's the problem with this organization, because once you make that plunge, now they hold that over your head for the rest of your life. Oh, you knew what you were doing. You went in full well. No, I didn't know what I was doing. I was too young to know.
Well, they compare it to getting married. What parent would let their 13, 14-year-old get married?
Exactly.
I wasn't allowed to date till I was 20 years old.
Actually, let's rephrase that. What normal parent would let their 13, 14-year-old get married? Because there are parents out there that still do.
That is true.
Especially in like these more isolated cults and things. But, on average, what normal parent would let their child get married that young? And there would be none. No. You're not old enough to drive. You're not old enough to vote. You're not old enough to drink. You're not old enough to sign contracts. You're not old enough to do a lot of things. But yet they want you to dedicate your life to a religion when you're not even old enough to make adult decisions on everything else.
My brother was even younger than me because he got baptized, I believe, the following year at 9.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And, scientists, of course, they change their minds on it based off research and stuff over time. But like, they say that your your brain doesn't fully develop till you're in your like mid to late 20s anyways. So even then, even up to your early 20s, early to mid 20s, you really shouldn't be making those decisions yet because you haven't fully developed. You're not going to really know what you want because that time in your life from birth to your early to mid 20s is so much growing, so much learning, and then especially when you get to the legal ages there, then you have those few more years where you get to really learn who you are as a person and explore life and things like that. And these religions, these cults, they don't let you do that. They don't let you develop. They stunt your growth.
In so many ways. And here they claim to be like Jesus. Jesus waited until he was 30 to start pursuing the religion. And you're tricking children into this.
Yeah, exactly. And really it's not something you should be proud of to say that, oh, I got, this 9 or 10-year-old to get baptized into the religion because I'm sorry, it's very easy to trick children.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a great example. One day I was in the car with my son and I was steering the car with my knee. Okay. And they had some curves on the road, but not very big ones where I needed to like really turn the wheel. And I took my hands off the wheel and I told my son, the car's driving itself. And of course, really? It is?
Yeah, because you believe your parents.
That's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
And, and then finally I told him, I'm like, no, son, it's really not. I'm just using my knee. It was kind of dark too, so he couldn't really see my knee. So,
Yes.
but that's just an example of how easy it is to trick children into believing things. Because he believed it right off the bat. Why did he believe it? I'm his dad. Why does he have any reason to not trust me? You know what I mean? And that's how it goes when you raise kids in religion. Children don't have any reason not to trust their parents until they're given a big reason not to. Because children are very forgiving and very trusting.
Yeah.
So how did your life change after baptism? Did it change any? Did things get better for you? Did they get worse for you?
So honestly, I got a lot more pressure to be perfect. I was already under extreme pressure because both my parents are very strict. And so like constant pressure, especially because my older siblings got disfellowshipped at a young age. So I had to be this perfect example. And things really didn't change until after when I graduated high school and I got my license at 18. So then I started regular pioneering. And when I did that, I was away from my family a little more. And so like my sister and I, we moved to a neighboring hall that needed help and my parents followed us. So our parents are like very controlling. So I started pioneering more. I started being a little bit away from the influence of my family, being that I was around the friends more and I was able to see stuff that just didn't make sense to me. So then at 20, I started dating, and like the witness dating is such a joke. Like, and because I was so strict into the religion, when I started talking to someone, I felt like I was dating them. Which is crazy, but that's what they teach. So being that I had no knowledge or anything to base any other decisions off, I was just like, oh, okay, this is what it says, then this is how it is.
It reminds me of that meme I see on Facebook where the brother, oh, he handed me the mic. Our hands touched. We're dating now.
Yeah. Basically. So I dated this one brother for a little bit, and it just wasn't right. Like, we had very different goals in life. I wanted to reach out and do as much as I could, because even though I didn't feel like I would be in the paradise, I wanted to do everything I could. Because this was all I had that's all I knew. Mm-hmm. So we ended up, breaking up. And then I met this other brother who was a ministerial servant at the time. Because I had such a low opinion of myself, I was just over the moon that somebody who was a ministerial servant wanted to date me. And so while we were dating, we dated for a year. And come to find out early on, he got reproved because he was sleeping with another sister. So dumb me rather than breaking up with this person because I was young and stupid and this was the first person I really liked. So my parents were very against me dating. They wanted me to wait till I was 25. And I got lectured the first time I held my boyfriend's hand. Like, I'm talking a sit down, Bible thumping, hour-long discussion about how that's wrong and you'll get feelings for this person. Now, at this time, I had no idea how sex worked. I was extremely controlled, so I didn't really know. I knew nothing. So I dated this person. My things got very violent and physical between my parents and I. So I ended up moving in with my sister and her worldly husband. And so me, my two younger siblings, and I all lived with them for about a year. During that time, my younger sister went and got married and moved down to Indiana. My brother ended up moving back in, and I ended up eventually moving back in with my parents as well, because while I was living with my sister and her husband, he realized that we were in a cult, and he went like the crazy, you're in a cult, you're not allowed to go to those meetings anymore, like rather than just letting me, because while I was there, I wasn't going to meetings regular, I wasn't studying like I should have been. So I was slowly starting to drift away from it, but then that happened and I went like way back into it.
Yeah, that happens when people go extreme like that, because you can't tell somebody who's in a cult that they're in one.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Especially
work.
without any evidence
Yeah.
at all about it. Like he just went off the handle about it and didn't show us any proof or anything to back up what he was saying.
Now, I want to take it back a little bit here, because you briefly touched upon it when you talked about how when you went down to Mississippi with your parents and when you were younger and you were molested by another child. Was this child, how much older was this kid than you?
They were like a year or two older than me.
Oh,
So
okay.
we were both really little.
Okay. So as far as how that was handled, did you say anything? Did it get handled at all?
So what ended up happening is my mom was actually in the room when it happened. And I ended up getting beat for it. It was all, which I don't know how this ended. Everything in my life was always my fault. So I got beat, and no one ever went to the police or did anything structure. I never got any help for it. I got constantly shamed and just treated like I was just not good anymore. So for my whole life, this always haunted me. It always was like in the back of my mind, and I always felt terrible. And then this person ended up moving to the hall we were in back up in Michigan.
Oh, wow.
And then this person was super popular, and here I was basically shunned growing up, treated like garbage. And this person who did this to me was like praised, and everybody loved her, and they always were hanging out with her, and I was always alone.
Yeah, and I really, I appreciate that you're sharing this. I hate hearing these stories, but they need to be out there too, because the way the witnesses handle this is just atrocious. And as we know, because the date of this recording right now is August 1st, and just what was it, Wednesday or Thursday?
I believe it was Wednesday,
I
possibly.
think it was Thursday.
Probably.
Yeah, because
I can look because.
Yeah, because it was Thursday. Here's how
Yeah.
No, it was Wednesday. I'm sorry, it was Wednesday. This is why. Because I had to go to work and I couldn't watch it. There was this show on Vice called Crusaders. It was about the Jehovah's Witnesses on just last week on Wednesday. It premiered.
Yeah.
I took Thursday night off, which was my Friday at work. And I actually was able to finally watch it the next night, and it showed how big of a problem there is with sexual abuse of children being covered up within the Jehovah's Witness. And the lawyer from Irwin Zulkin out in California, he made a statement that was very powerful, and he said that the Jehovah's Witness problem with it is worse than the Catholics. And that's big
Mhm.
because Jehovah's Witnesses always used to bash Catholics in their literature with their child
I've
sexual abuse
mentioned.
problem, and a whole lot of other things. And for somebody to come out and say that witnesses are worse is huge, especially because the Catholics have also said, yes, we do have a problem and we apologize for the problem. Jehovah's Witnesses have not. They continue to fight to keep their files and records on it covered up at all costs.
Mhm. Which actually, I was looking at my phone because the day that came out, even though, so the only people out are me and my brother. Everyone else is still in. And there were some family situations going on. So my mom made a group text so she could control what's said to who, and like she wants to be in control of any communication that goes on. So she made a group family text. So the day it came out, I'm one of those people who I want everyone to know about it. So I sent it to them and I'm like, you can keep being a witness, that's fine, but you need to know what's going on. Because like a lot of my nephews and my nieces are all still in it and I want them to be protected. So I'm like, know what happens, know what goes on. As you can probably guess how well that went over, but at least they know about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all you can do. All you can do is let them know what's going on and just let the chips fall where they may.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now let's go ahead and sorry about the deviation there. So let's go back to you were talking about how you were with this ministerial servant and he cheated on you while you were with him.
Yeah, so the whole time because, I'm not sure if this was how it was for you, but where I was, there weren't a lot of options for dating. So if you wanted to date somebody, you had to like go to different halls to find someone that was. So he lived about 2 hours away from me. So the whole time I was dating him, he was still with this girl who got disfellowship for sleeping with him. I didn't know about that. So then
I'm sorry, he was with a girl who got disfellowshipped for sleeping with him,
yes.
and he's still a ministerial servant.
So at the time he was reproved. He ended up getting all his stuff back, according, as far as I know, he did, because his dad was an elder. So we dated for about a year. He kept it really secret. And of course, because I was so naive and just really not aware of how relationships should work, I didn't, like, it bothered me, but I didn't have as much of an issue as I should have. So we dated for a while. Then we broke up. She was reinstated. They got married. And
Wow.
yeah. So like, that was really hurtful. I ended up moving back in with my parents. And so
Now, can I ask you something just out of curiosity here?
yep.
And after you answer, I'll tell you why. Because do you know how long it was after he got reproved that he was back being a ministerial servant?
It was not very long.
Like 6 months, a year?
About that time, because I do believe he was back to being a ministerial servant when we broke up.
Okay. And the reason why I ask, because back when I started dating, I dated a girl before my wife from Pioneer School, and we fooled around. We didn't go all the way, but we did enough that, it was deemed bad. And then I got reproved for that. And while I was still on reproof is when I actually met my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wasn't really working hard to like get back, into it or whatever. But like, then I met my wife, and of course, we went and did even more. So I got we, and the only reason why I never got disfellowshipped was because I got married. I don't know if that was a thing in your area. Like, if people had sex before marriage in my area and they got married, they never got disfellowshipped. They always got reproved.
Nope, they still got disfellowshipped. Like our area was extremely strict. I know a couple that they were getting married, and my mom was actually supposed to be in the wedding, and it got found out like the day or so before the wedding, and they got disfellowshipped,
Oh wow.
and like the whole thing got canceled and everything.
Jeez. Okay. So let's go
So
ahead
because
and
of that,
continue on. So he's back to being a ministerial servant. You're with him now. So let's go ahead and continue on from there.
so like we were actually engaged. Come to find out, he didn't tell any of his family or anybody that we were engaged. So when I found that out, I ended it because I didn't have a lot of respect for myself or value, but I felt like if I was going to be with somebody, they should love me enough to want people to know we were together.
Yeah.
And especially his family should know we were getting married.
Yeah.
So that ended up breaking up. I moved back in with my parents. I talked to a couple other people, and then I ended up going on a trip to Bethel with my brother because my brother was having he was having trouble with his faith at this time. Neither one of us were popular. We didn't have any friends, and so he was like a normal person having a problem being in a religion where you're not accepted. So him and I went on this trip to New York, and that is where I ended up meeting my ex-husband. He was on the trip with his sister, and I was on the trip with my brother, and we were all about the same age, so we like hung out a lot. And our dating was extremely monitored because of like how I said, the couple that got disfellowshipped a couple days before their wedding. So like never any time alone. We did manage to have a conversation that was rather inappropriate over the phone, which I felt guilty about until I woke up. I felt guilty about that.
Oh jeez.
And a phone conversation.
Yeah.
So we met and were married within 3 months. And his whole family was really awful. Like I will say I cared for his dad the most out of that whole family. He was the most decent person out of all of them. But they were like, I wasn't allowed to, from the time we got married till I left, I wasn't allowed to have hardly anything to do with my family. I wasn't able to talk to or be with any of my friends. I was very, very controlled, even more so than I was growing up.
Oh, geez.
So it was really awful. I found out later that they called my place of employment to find out how much money I was making, what my schedule was, stuff like that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, because they wanted to have control over all my finances.
Wow.
Yeah. And so here we got married, and come to find out on our wedding night that he was not a virgin. And because I didn't know how this worked. I hadn't even seen junk until that night. So I'm like trying to figure this out. I have no idea because my sex education wasn't anything. My mom's like, you'll figure this out when you get married. So like, I'm like completely dumb here. I found out he had an addiction to porn, and he's like, don't do anything. I know how to get me. First time ever having sex, and you know how to get you. And that was how relations went through the entire marriage. Like, I had no say in what happened. I just had to lay there and take it.
That is just so effed up. It's ridiculous.
It's really bad. Like,
I'm
being married for 3 years and not knowing how sex works, that's
yeah.
pretty messed up.
I mean, I have no words for that. I mean, because my experience on that end of things is completely different than yours. Like, I mean, like I said, I had dated with a girl before and fooled around with her a little bit. Um, I was, as far as like outright sex, I was a virgin until I met my now wife. But I at least had some kind of education on that. Through elementary school, we actually had sex ed classes in school, and having an older brother, I had seen some porn and stuff when I was too young to see it. So I knew what stuff looked like and everything and where it went and a little bit, of course I know porn's not great for education. I'm not saying it is, but I had a better idea.
I didn't see porn until a couple weeks ago, honestly,
Wow.
because it was like I wasn't even allowed to watch kissing scenes in movies.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, like that was my mom's like, don't look, they're kissing, so like completely sheltered. And then the day after I got married, my mom's like, okay, we can talk about all this stuff now, like it's all totally flipped. And I was like, no, we can't. How she could go from no conversation at all, it's bad, it's icky, no, to okay, we can talk like two girlfriends now.
Jeez. No.
I couldn't do it, so I never talked to her about the abuse or anything because I couldn't talk to her about it.
No.
Like she was able to switch like that, but I couldn't. It was too hard for me to talk to her about it, let alone this is wrong, and it was painful. So how am I supposed to tell you that?
Yeah.
When I was never allowed to talk about anything.
Yeah, you don't go from nothing to okay, here's the floodgates of it all. No. That's not how things work.
I found out some painful stuff about her life the day of my wedding, a few hours before I walked down the aisle. Because all through my life, she was like, oh, I'll tell you before you get married. And I was like, do not do that to me. Like, I have severe social anxiety and stuff. So getting married is stressful enough. I didn't want to walk down the aisle after being told all about sex. But she did not respect my wishes. So that's what I got.
And that right there is very typical of JW parents, is not respecting boundaries and wishes of their children. That I can completely relate to, not so much with my own parents. As far as parents are concerned, and the JWs of mine were like light years ahead of the organization. But from like my wife's parents, absolutely overstepping boundaries all the time, putting their nose where it doesn't belong,
Mm-hmm.
overly intrusive. Yeah, I can definitely relate with that.
And that was
So
how,
so
I'm sorry.
let's move on to so when do you remember first starting having doubts about the religion, and how did you handle them from there?
So when I was 20 and I ended up going into that hair school, it was the first time I was allowed to be around worldly people without my parents there. Because like even visiting family members, because my parents and my uncle are the only three that are in the cult of their families. So growing up, I was never around my worldly family. It was always really short monitored visits. So when I went to the school, I was around worldly people all the time. And it was really shocking to me because they weren't how they were portrayed. Like they were just normal people. And so it was a huge shock because you're taught all your life that they're one way, but they're actually not. So I started, and then when I lived with my, ex-brother-in-law and sister who weren't doing anything with the truth, obviously. So I started to see discrepancies, but I just pushed it down, because this was what I grew up knowing. This was all I knew. And so when I got married and I moved in with my ex-husband and we went to his hall and all this stuff, I started noticing a lot more hypocrisy and just stuff that wasn't okay. And what really hurt was when I saw older friends be completely abandoned by the hall. And I remember this one sister who she had so much abuse, and just like her stuff she would tell me just broke my heart, what she went through at the age of like from 3 onward at the hands of the organization, and just how they put up with it and they just completely abused the sister. And there she was, alone in a nursing home. The friends barely visited her. And just seeing that she gave her life to this, and this is how they repaid her. And then one of the sisters at the hall was like, you're going to burn yourself out because, you know, the truth just uses you and then throws you out. And that shocked me because I had never, that was the complete opposite of what I've been taught my whole life. So to hear her say that.
Yeah, you're always told, oh, it's a refreshing oasis to go to, and you know, if you have any problems whatsoever, just bury your head in the truth and you'll be fine.
Yes, which was what I was doing because I was so miserable in my marriage. Because, like, the relationship I had with my ex was, I was basically a maid for him whenever he felt like it. And that, like, we had no communication, we had no couple stuff. And when you're dating as a witness, you don't have that anyway.
No, not at all.
So, like, there was nothing. I was super alone and miserable. So I was, like, pioneering and going out in service all the time and just doing everything I could possibly do that the organization tells you makes you happier. And
you
it's
know,
not.
I honestly think that the one thing that has helped, like, with my wife and I, with us, because we were both Jehovah's Witnesses when we were married, you know, and we were young. She was 18 and I was 21 when we got married. So we were very young to get married. But I think one of the biggest things that helped us to keep our relationship through all these years, because just last month on July 3rd was our anniversary. We had our 17-year wedding anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
And we broke the rules of the witnesses. You know, we had sex before marriage. We had phone conversations, just her and I, late into the night many a times. So we talked about anything, her and I. So I think that helped as far as we were concerned to get around the whole, you know, everybody looking over your shoulder 24/7 thing. So that way we could actually develop a relationship with each other and not just develop a relationship with the religion over the marriage.
Yep.
So for any of you young ones listening right now, break all the rules.
Yes. Don't get married and not know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
Because
And
it's not fun.
And if you don't feel right about it, get out of it. There's a reason you don't feel right about it. Instead of what the witnesses always want you to do is bury those doubts. No, don't bury it.
No.
Even if it comes to relationships, don't bury it.
Yes.
So you're seeing all this hypocrisy going on now. So what's going on in your head? How are you reacting to all this?
So at this point, we had finally moved into our own home, and I'm still dealing with all this undue influence from my ex-mother-in-law. She was overly involved and extremely controlling, even from my standpoint. And I had parents that were super involved in controlling, and she was like extreme end of that spectrum. And so I'm going through all this. I'm alone all the time. I'm feeling terrible. My brother moves in with us because, like I said, he was still struggling with the not having any friends, not having any connections, and there was a lot more kids his age downstate. So I'm like, move in with us, you can get a job, we'll get you set up, and then you can, find your own apartment or find somebody to have an apartment with, like room with one of the brothers, because there's a lot of friends that did that. So he moves down, he starts seeing the abuse I'm facing, what's going on, and he starts speaking up for me, and like, which is awesome because I needed that. And like, so my ex starts doubling down on being a horrible person. And I get super depressed, and I decide that I'm going to kill myself. And I tell my brother and my ex that I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm just done. I can't deal with life anymore. So my ex is like, well, that's terrible. Don't do it. And he goes off next door to his parents and is there for 8 hours, never calls, never texts, never comes back to check on me, nothing. And my brother, who had plans, he was going to go out with some friends and do some stuff that day, and he cancels everything. And which I should go back a little bit, just before this, he told me that he had doubts and that he was going to leave, and he asked me if I was going to shun him. And I had to say, well, yes, I have to. And this was leading up to me wanting to end it because I couldn't shun him. This was like the only person in my life who cared about me, who stood up for me, and I could not shun him. And so he's like, I want to show you why I feel the way I do, because you need to see this. So that entire day we watched Lloyd Evans all day and all these and that was like my awakening started that day. And then I took the next 3 days, and the minute my brother got home from work, we watched videos all day, and just like kept telling him, I can't watch another video, otherwise I'm not going to believe this. And he's like, but you have to see this video, you got to know this. And so I was like, okay. And by the end of those 3 days, I was done.
What was your brother saying? Let's roll the first clip.
Yes. He was like, and it went from watching the John Cedars channel to watching this channel to watching Telltale to Jay the Comedian. It was like we were checking out everything, and I would just like, I couldn't get enough. But at the same time, I was like, the more I know, the less I believe it.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long, because I'd seen so much hypocrisy, and I was seeing all this stuff, and to have evidence and facts and reading from the Elders book, and I was like, what?
So let me ask you something about that real quick. So, because you said when you were real young, your dad was an elder, and obviously you said he stepped down after one of your older siblings got disfellowship. But did you know throughout the course of your life, or when you were younger or whatever, about the Elders book before you started watching all these videos?
So I had heard mention of it. My dad really never talked about it. And I remember somebody said that we were in the car group and the subject of apostates came out, and they're talking about, well, the elders have their own secret handbook, and somebody's like, yeah, it's the God's love book. So that's what I thought it was.
Oh,
I didn't know it was what it was.
See, for me, growing up, my dad was an elder my entire life growing up until, of course, they left in 2010. And that's when my dad stepped down as an elder finally and left. I actually knew about his book. I knew it was the Shepherd the Flock of God book. I knew what the book looked like because I had seen it physically. But I had never been able to crack into it, because, don't open it, don't look at it kind of thing. And I remember asking my dad years ago, I'm like, Dad, what's in that Elders book anyways? Like, what's it all about, right? He goes, oh, it's just a bunch of Watchtower articles. That's all he told me. But see, now you had said previously in our conversation, not on this video, but previously, that you had been to Pioneer School, right? So
I went to 2.
You went to 2 Pioneer School. So remember when you got the Pioneer School book? Because I went to Pioneer School too. They told you, what did they tell you? Not to show it to anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Because it'll spoil them and they won't want to go to it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
It's like, if this is supposed to like help us be better preachers or whatever, why aren't we giving this to everybody? Why is there
Yeah,
certain classes of people that get these books and you can't share it with everybody? And it's even worse with the elders manual, because that's a whole bunch of rules and policies and stuff that the elders will hold you to
mm-hmm,
that you don't know about. It's like going to court
exactly.
without a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you
See,
don't know the
that is
law and you don't have any representation either.
absolutely none. And like that whole thing about me feeling guilty about having a conversation, come to find out it's covered in the elders book, and all we would have got was a, well, you know, you shouldn't have done that, let's pray with you,
Yeah.
because it had been so many years ago.
Well, it's like, if I would have known back years ago, like, when I was, messing around with my wife before we got married, that all I would have had to do was wait a few years or never said anything and nothing would have ever happened. And even if it did
Yeah.
finally come up that we did have sex before marriage and it had been several years and, we didn't do anything else bad, quote unquote bad since
Mm-hmm.
then, there would have been no punishment.
And things you don't know that you just feel guilty about that makes you sick, like all kinds of stuff,
Well,
because you guilt over it.
I gotta say, looking back though to that particular thing with my wife, I never really felt guilty about it, and neither did my wife. But the only reason it came out was because my dad asked me one day out of the blue,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to lie to my dad straight to his face. That's the
Yeah.
only reason it came out. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
So that's just me. I have a I know I have a very different experience than a lot of people and a lot of things. So I look at like my my side of things
Mm-hmm.
from my upbringing, and I feel like, as far as witness kids and families were concerned, we were like the liberals and everybody else was the conservatives. That's how I kind of look at it. So let's go back now. You're watching all these videos and everything. Do you remember what was your final straw, your aha moment, saying, "You know what? I'm done with this shit. I'm walking. I'm getting out of it." What was that for you?
Well, for me, it wasn't a one thing. It was a couple different major things. Like the one video that Lloyd does about bringing up real questions as to whether or not there is a God of the Bible in the first place. And that one was huge for me. The Australian Royal Commission, the fact that they were so, like, didn't care about their members really, and the Elders book. Those, and the fact that all those rules are kept hidden from you and you're not allowed to know them. That was like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring someone else into this. And at the time, you gotta remember, I'm pioneering. I just got back from pioneer school. I literally, while I was studying, my brother came to me and told me he was leaving and why. And so this was like the week after pioneer school, all this went down. And so I'm trying to make excuses for not going out in service. Luckily, it had only been like 3 days, so it wasn't a big deal. And so, like, I'm sitting there, I'm feeling terrible, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I do not want to bring someone else into it and make them destroy their lives for something that doesn't care about you. You can't do it. And at the time, I still had like this dumb sense of loyalty to my ex. And because I'm one of those people, when I find something out, I want to share it. I want to tell everybody. Like, if I find something interesting, I like to talk about it. So I went to him and I told him what I found, and I told him I didn't believe anymore. And most normal couples, even witness couples, things are private. And especially something like this, they don't want to go straight to the elders. They want to try to deal with it in-house before they have to talk to the elders. My ex went straight to my parents, told them that I was a devil worshipping apostate. My brother and I were just apostates and horrible people and like demon possessed and whatnot. He went to the elders. So I was having, stress at work. All this stuff was going on. Like things were just, and stress from his family stuff was bad. I was at an emotional breaking point. And like he was being mean to my brother because he didn't like the fact that my brother was there putting a stop to his abuse. He was just really upset. So he saw this as a perfect opportunity to get my brother kicked out of our house. Because up until that point, he had no reason, because my brother was like super awesome, took care, like did dishes, helped out with laundry, was a great kid. And so he just went, I came home from work that Wednesday and there were elders at my house, his family, like this huge intervention. And I was like, so keep in mind, that Monday I told him I was going to kill myself. That Wednesday I come home to an intervention. Not for me wanting to kill myself, but because I wanted to leave the religion.
Yeah. They honestly didn't care if you wanted to kill yourself, huh?
No.
And I hate to say that, but they really didn't.
Well, the fact that he left for 8 hours and never checked on me kind of speaks volumes to that.
Exactly.
So that all happened Wednesday. That Thursday morning, I made a post saying that I was taking time off for myself. I let my clients know I wasn't going to be doing any appointments for the foreseeable future and that I just needed a reprieve. So that's up for maybe like 15 minutes. I get a phone call from an ex-coworker who's not a witness. She's Catholic. And she calls me up and she's like, honey, what's going on? Like, this isn't you. Talk to me. So we talk and we talk for about 5 minutes. She cracks everything down. She's like, you are in an unsafe place. This person does not care about you. And I started telling her some stuff that was going on. She's like, you need to get away from him. Because right now, I fear for your life. And you need to get out of that house. So I text my brother at work. I tell him that I'm leaving. Don't tell so-and-so. I put his dog, my brother's dog, my dog in the car. I grab a backpack and I drive to my sister's house because at this point, my sister called me and was like, what the heck is going on? Come here now, you'll be safe. So I get in my car and I drive away and I'm gone. My sister lived 6 hours away from where I lived. So I'm at the peak of anorexia, haven't slept in 3 days, haven't eaten, driving down 6 hours, crying my eyes out, because I just realized my entire faith was bullcrap. All this stuff. I get down to my sister's, and as I'm driving down there, my ex calls me. He's like, you're not home, where are you? And I tell him that I'm going to a friend's house. I need to think. I can't. What you did was really hurtful. I can't be around you right now. He's like, and I had worked with a lady who was a lesbian. He's like, you're going to her house, aren't you? And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, why would you? He's like, you're going to go be a lesbian. I can't believe you. You disgust me. Never talk to him literally ever again. It's the last phone call conversation I had ever had. Like, I saw him at the courthouse because I ended up getting a restraining order from him and other stuff. Last conversation we had.
Well, that conversation right there speaks volumes as to the kind of person he was, and really, I know you probably didn't see it this way at the time. I'm hoping that you do now, but you really had a strength inside of you that you didn't realize, and you leaving like that was that strength coming out. And
I feel like it was if I didn't do this, I wasn't going to survive.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I had always been anorexic my whole life because my parents placed a lot of pressure on your looks, and my older sisters were overweight, and my dad he bullied them about it their whole life. So I didn't eat because I didn't want to be bullied. So at this point in my life, I was the skinniest I had ever been.
But even still, though, you might even, I think, even without realizing it, it was a very strong thing for you to do, because you had, even though you had a friend call you and say, hey, you know, you're in a dangerous situation, you need to get out, you still listened to that.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of times, like when people are in abusive situations like that, you know, even with somebody telling them that they still be like, oh, no, no, no. They'll make excuses for the person or whatever. You didn't do that. You were like, I know this is a messed up situation. You're right. I got to get out of here. And so your mind had already gotten past the part of making excuses for him, and you went on. And that's very commendable on your part.
Well, thank you.
So I think
the major reason I was able to do that is because of what happened on Monday, and the fact that he demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt that he didn't care.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that should be a lesson for anybody watching who's in this kind of situation. You know, get out of it. You know, get out of that situation. Get yourself to a safe place. Also, you said this before, and what did your coworker also tell you to do that nobody else in your life had ever told you to do before?
She's like, you need to go get some mental help.
Yes.
You need to talk to somebody.
Yes.
And
exactly.
So I got down to my sister's house, and I was there for a night, and I was just like collapsed in her arms, crying, feeling terrible. And so the next day she didn't want to leave me alone, but she had to go to work. So a friend of hers who did a lot of working from home stuff, she's like, she has a day off, you're going to go over there and you're going to be there. And that is when, like, I had slept for the first time in days. I was actually eating some food. I wasn't getting it for myself, but they were like, here, you're going to eat something. So I did. And that is when everything sunk in, and I ended up having a mental breakdown and ended up in the emergency room that night. Because that's when it all hit me, the reality of my situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I finally talked to somebody. And then before I did that, I talked to a friend of mine, and that's where I learned that I was raped for 3 years by my ex-husband. Because I had no idea of sex, I didn't know I was. And when I told her what was going on, she's like, honey, you realize you're being raped in this conversation. And that's when it hit me. And I was like, what?
Yeah. It's terrible especially because, like you had said before, you didn't have that education on these things, so you didn't know. And when you're finding out about all these things, and you're like, oh, that was happening to me. It's just, I'm sure that brought on a whole new flood of emotions when you're having these new realizations about how messed up it really was.
Yeah.
But also add to the fact, though, you got out of it, you escaped it, and that is why you're sitting with me here today talking about it.
The only reason, yes.
So, bravo to you. I hope that whoever sees this video after, and people can get some help and see that from your story that it is possible to get out of these situations, and that you need to get out of these situations.
Absolutely.
And so at this point now, you left your, did you write a letter at this point? Did you call them? What did you do? Or did you just up and leave and not turn back to them?
I was down living at my sister's for about a month, and so at this point, my family convinced me not to leave the religion yet. They didn't even care if I believed it or not. They're just like, you cannot leave yet because we can't help you if you leave. So my brother and I, he's ready to go at this point. Like, he wants to live his life. He doesn't want to be in this cult. I don't want to be in it either. But we were like, okay, I had to smooth things over. I had so many elders meetings to convince them that I wasn't an apostate. And I had conversations about intimate details about my marriage in front of my, not only my little brother, my father and mother were in the rooms. So I'm talking to these old men in front of my entire family. And like I said, my parents and I didn't have conversations about sex or anything. So here I'm telling details of my rape and my life in front of my little brother and my dad and my mom. And my dad's mad at my mom, like, why didn't you tell her about stuff? And I'm looking at my dad, why didn't you tell me about sex? Why didn't either of you inform me about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable? Why are you pissed off at mom? You should be mad at yourself. And so I go through this for about a month because I was living down in Indiana. Then I moved back to Michigan with my family to live with my parents again, which was hard. Growing up in that house was hard. I never wanted to live in it again. And I had to because that was my only option.
Jeez.
So I'm back at home, super controlled, and watching apostate videos every chance I get. And I created like a whole secret Facebook account to be in part of the Exjw community, and like, because I wasn't going to stay. I was like, the minute I can get out on my own, I don't want to be in this. And stuff, like, I went to an assembly on my own, and I couldn't, after that assembly, I couldn't stay in it anymore because it was all pressuring wives to stay with their husbands no matter what.
Oh, jeez.
And so here I am sitting after all this strength and inner fight to leave. I'm being told that basically I'm a bad person for doing this. So then I'm talking to the elders in my parents' congregation where I grew up. I moved to this hall when I was 18, but it was like the neighboring one, so we were there all the time. And they knew me. From the time I was like little, they knew who I was. So these elders were like basically family because they were the only ones I had. And so he's telling me this is so common even in our own hall that people leave their husbands and have to be single for the rest of their life. Like, Jehovah's going to help you. You just stay single and stay alone for the rest of your life. And I don't want that.
Yeah.
Because, like, even though I had all this abuse and stuff, I knew there was more to life. And especially, like, learning what else is out there. I didn't want that life for myself. So I'm talking to my grandma, who has never been a witness, and she's like, come live with me. Like, I want to get to know you. I have this place, I got an extra bedroom, you can come live with me. So my brother and I, we talk about it, we send our letters in together that November. So from September to November, I was out. I was done.
Nice.
And during this time, so when I moved back in with my parents in about October, and I joined the XJW Facebooks and all that stuff, I met my now fiance. And so I was hiding that I was an apostate and watching apostate videos. I was hiding that I was having a relationship. So like anytime my parents would walk in the room, I'd say pineapple and we'd stop talking. And we're like talking about, like, I really want to get some pineapples or something. Just like, Antonise loves pineapples. Like, I need to get this out for food. Like, just randomly bringing up the word. And then you're just stone silent. So that went on for like about a month until I moved in with my grandma.
Nice.
And so it was like, it was pretty funny.
So now you're out. You've sent your letter in. You're completely done.
Mm-hmm.
So how is your life now? Of course, I know the initial stages of leaving are going to be a bit of a rocky road because you're learning how to live on your own for the first time, away from the cult, away from everything you knew. So you're going to have those rocky stages. But, overall, since you've left, how has your life changed? Is it better? Are you still having problems? Like, how is it for you?
So for me, the number one thing that's changed is being able to be myself and genuine and have a relationship with people in my life. Like my brother and I were super close, but we had to be guarded with each other about what we talked about because there's that witness that like if you like a video game or something that's not okay, you have to be told on in the snitch society. So now that we don't have that anymore, it's like I actually know my brother. I actually know people in my life. Like I can genuinely know them. And I like learned how so many people I knew had a double life and I felt super left out because I didn't. But one of the first things I remember that was extremely significant to me was, so I left, I was in Florida, I was working at a restaurant, and it was about Valentine's Day, coming up to it. And so they decorated, of course, and I come out and here's my name included with all the other servers on like the hearts. So I was just, it meant so much to me because I was a part of something. I was included, and they had my name spelt correctly up there with everybody else's. And I just remember just breaking down and crying, and they're like, "Are you okay? Like, what's wrong?" Because it meant so much to me that I was a part of something. I wasn't shunned or excluded. I was included in this, and I was a part of it.
And they were accepting you for who you were, no matter what. They weren't even asking you. They were just
No,
accepting you, period.
I was able to go over to coworkers' houses and we like played cards or we went out for drinks later. And it was something I never had, like not even with the witnesses, I wasn't included. So to be included in this stuff, and here's these people who they're worldly, but they actually are genuine and want to be friends with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you also said you have a fiance. You and him just bought a house recently too.
Yes. Yes, we did. And it is so in my past relationship, I had no say in anything that happened in our lives. So in this one, it's complete opposite. It's like night and day. Like I have the house I've always wanted. Since I was a kid, I always wanted to live in a farmhouse with big front porches and side porches. And we kept looking until we found something we both liked that was perfect for both of us. And so it's like an equality and a partnership versus what the cult has to offer, which is just being somebody's submissive, silent partner who has no say in the relationship.
Versus a patriarchy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's completely different and just so much better. Like it's a genuine, huge difference to be a partner versus a patriarchy.
And just I'm gonna just say this real quick because some of the things I know I've probably said throughout the video might seem like a little weird because Makala and I actually recorded this interview one time before and we had some issues after the recording, so we're re-recording this. So when I say that you said something before, sometimes it's not necessarily from this time that we recorded, it's from the previous one. So in the previous one you told me of course your walls are all white and everything right now, but you were telling me you were gonna paint them and you're gonna be able to pick all the colors you want to pick and do the things, decorate the house the way you want to decorate it, which you didn't have a choice in before.
No, before I was not allowed to do anything to the house. I was allowed to clean it. And even then it was not up to standard.
Oh, jeez.
So I couldn't paint it because it wouldn't look good because you can't do anything right. And I'm an artist. So I wasn't allowed to do anything I liked. And in this one, Connor's like, you pick the paint out. I'm a professional painter. I'll paint the whole house. Whatever color you want, it's going on the walls. And in our girls' room, because he has a child, And so in our girls' room, I'm going to do a mural and make it like all this fairy wonderland thing and paint all these different stuff. And it's got like a secret little play area and it's going to be really cool. And I'm total control over everything in that room and
Nice,
the entire rest of
nice.
the house.
My wife is actually an artist too, and she's done some wall murals before, and they're just fantastic to have in the house. I love it.
And
So
it's
I
stuff that
definitely
I've
looking
loved to
forward to
do.
when you do that and seeing pictures of it up on Facebook and everything. So
Um,
one last bit, and we'll wrap it up here. So do you have any advice for those who may be watching and who are currently doubting their beliefs?
Research. Research everything. Research. You cannot do enough
Now,
because
now when you say research,
like
do
I
you
said,
mean
my older
jw.org?
sisters, jwfacts.com. Don't, the organization tells you what they want. When you go on these apostate sites that they've demonized, you're learning from the publications. It's everything that, like, you will know the truth about the truth. And you need to do that because, like I said, my older sisters got disfellowshipped. The one is inactive. They're so controlled by the cult because they've never researched. They refuse to do any. They won't. I sent all my sisters the Elder's book, and I even sent it to my parents, and I'm like, if you're going to live this, you need to know about it. You need to know the rules that you're held accountable to. They won't read it. So research it because that's how you're going to prove to yourself and be able to live your life and not be held back to maybe it is. You need to have that so you can live your life without guilt. So you can be free to find out who you are. To, like I say, I'm pansexual. To be able to be like, that's okay. Now, true, I'm in a monogamous relationship, but to be able to know that this is who I am and I'm okay with it and there's nothing wrong with it, the freedom you get is from learning and researching and knowing the truth about the truth.
Absolutely. Very well said. So, anyways, we're going to wrap it up there, Makala. I
Sounds
really
good.
appreciate you doing this with me for a second time.
You're welcome.
um, it even doing it again, it's just listening to the stories. It's just some stuff is still mind-boggling. The oppression that this cult puts you through is just ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
and like you said, research, 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 find out the facts about it. And when I say that, and I'm sure when you say that too, it doesn't just mean go to one source. It means
No.
find sources from both sides of the argument, compare it, put it together, see if these statements and these things that they say actually line up with reality.
Mm-hmm.
Do very objective research, because the Watchtower Society only gives you subjective research when it comes to their stuff. You can look at their Life How Did It Get Here by Evolution or Creation book, very subjective research. Their teaching on the cross, for example, very subjective research, because they take quotes, little bits of quotes,
Mm-hmm.
and fit it into where they want you to hear it from. Say it's from this source, but then miss the whole rest of the quote that totally contradicts what they're trying to tell you. And they have done that many times. And don't just take my word for it. Go look it up for yourself. Because when I
Mm-hmm.
started seeing all that stuff, even after I had made my mind up to leave, I was just like, holy shit. It's just mind-boggling how much they controlled you in every little part of your life. So
Yeah. And not before you end up ending it. So people didn't know how much I was being abused, but they knew how much I was being controlled. They knew how little of a say I had in my life and how the choices my ex-husband was making, how adversely they were affecting me. They were okay with that. They're okay with people being controlled to the point where they have no say in their life. That's not okay.
no, it's definitely not. not at all. And if anybody knows somebody in that situation, you can't just go tell them that they're in a cult or whatever, but try to be a friend to them. Try be there for them in ways that other people have never been there for them before, because that will go so far for somebody to have a friend, to have a listening ear of somebody who won't judge them, you know, and that'll just be so night and day difference between what they're used to, and that'll really help them to start thinking for themselves a little bit and seeing that the outside world of their bubble isn't as bad as what they're being told it is. So anyways, we're going to wrap it up there. Again, thank you, Makala, and I want to thank the viewers for whoever's watching this video for tuning in. And please be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And thank you for watching.